Eric McKinney here with former Trojan Ron Ayala. Ron, thanks so much for taking the time. We'll jump into to first and 10 with you here. So welcome welcome in with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So getting started, we're looking back before your time at USC. How did that play? How did you end up at USC? What was the kind of path to you from Westlake to USC?
I had an former SC sprinter who was back in the late 30s and 40s, early 40s, who was a neighbor that lived right behind me. And at the time, I was in junior high school. I was an athlete and doing a lot of things. And anyway, the families kind of knew each other. And he would laugh and joke at me and tell me, "Yeah, you know, you're going to go to SC. You're going to play at SC because that's just where you need to go." He was a great guy. He had gone in the military. He was all set to go to the 40 Olympics. The war broke out. He went in the military. He got blown out of a foxhole. Lost both of his kneecaps, and he never returned back to his speed. I mean, he could walk and everything, but he was never the sprinter again. His name was Ed Morris. He was out of Huntington Beach High School in the late 30s. Well, when he went to school, he also happened to be real good friends and a roommate with Coach Jim Stanglin, who at the time was at Long Beach City College as a coach. So by the time I got to high school, Coach Stanglin was at Long Beach City, and my neighbor was still pounding in my ear that there was no other place for me to go but SC. And I got introduced. I ended up running into him in some awards dinners, and the conversation got started, and the idea and the dream kind of started at that point. Always knowing it was still a dream, and then you're still hoping and praying, and then you trying to get through what you're doing in high school. But that's kind of where it all started, and so when the opportunity came, I got recruited by other schools, but in the back of my mind, I pretty much knew if I was going to get an offer from SC, I was going to go. And then even to Coach McKay's credit for me is he was kind of a short guy, and he kind of watched out for other smaller guys. I had a high jumped in high school and long jumped, and I high jumped 6'6" when I was in a junior year, and he sent me a telegram congratulating me on my school record and stuff. So it was one of those, oh yeah, even Coach McKay sending, keeping an eye on me, and so I mean that just encouraged me even more. So yeah, I was pretty well set that if I got the opportunity, I was going to go to SC.
When you're at USC, the favorite game that you played in as a Trojan?
Ooh, favorite game was probably every time I got to go out on the field, put the uniform on. There was really no. For me, I was a 5'9", 170-pound kid coming out of high school. I was not the fastest guy. I was not the biggest guy. But nobody had told me I couldn't play there except some coaches when I got recruited. The old, don't go to SC, come here, you'll be a big fish in a little pond. If you go there, you'll be a little fish in a big pond. You'll never play, and all those kinds of things. And the more that people told me that, the more I kept saying, no, I can do this, I can make that. So really it was just the fact that I got to be a USC Trojan and wear the Carlin gold and live all the tradition and the history and the legends. That was probably the best part about going to SC.
You talk about the tradition, the history, and legendary USC players. You were there with a few of them. Who was the best player, would you say, that you played with at USC?
God, it was, I mean, in different aspects of the game, there was just, I was there when OJ was there. I was a freshman when he was a junior when he first got there the first year in '67. But at the same time, I mean, we had 11 guys drafted out of that '67 team. It was, there was Ron Ayala, there was Mike Battle, there was Adrian Young, there was, Chip Oliver. I mean, it was just great players. And, on a defensive side, there was Adrian Young, Tim Rosevich. I had mentioned Mike Battle, so I mean, those were guys that were just when I first got there. And then as I went through my 3 years of playing, because in those days freshmen weren't allowed to play on the varsity. As I was so aptly told, when I ran out on the field the very first time out on the old Bovard field, I ran out and looked around and I go, there's no bell dummies, there's no hitting sleds here. And the first guy out was Tim Rosovich. So as freshmen, we were all given our helmets with our names, our last names printed across our foreheads, so the coaches could at least know who we were. So I knew who Tim Rosovich was because we were there for 2 weeks before we could practice. So, he came running out, and I very, meekly said, Mr. Rosovich, what do we practice again? There's no bell dummies, there's no sleds. And he just looked at me and patted me on top of the head and said, son, that's why we have freshmen. And we were told in practice, this is, you're here for one reason as freshmen. You'll play a couple, 2-3 games, but you're here for only one reason. That's to get the varsity ready. And it says, and you'll get when you guys move up, you get your chance. But it was true. It was true. I think that was the other part of it. We played every day against some of the greatest players that played the game. I mean, like I said, when I got a lot farther into my career, there was Clarence Davis, Jimmy Jones, Sam Cunningham. There was the Wild Bugs. There was the Cardiac Kids. I mean, it was just some great players, and that was on our team. You got an attitude and a realization and a feeling that we played Monday through Friday against the toughest competition we were ever going to meet. So it came Saturday, I mean, we'd already played the best of the best. So, there was no doubt that, we had the better team and we were going to win.
Talking about Saturdays, you mentioned the talent on those USC teams. How about looking at opposition, the best player that you played against during your time at USC?
Well, again, it's you just can't take one. Playing Ohio State my junior year in the Rose Bowl, and going against Jack Tatum and Rex Kern and Dan Brockington, Jim Plunkett and Gene Washington from Stanford, Joe Theismann from Notre Dame. I mean, everybody that we played against every week was somebody who was going to either be in the NFL, going to be a Hall of Famer or something. Because everybody we played seemed to have somebody. So yeah, it was never one person. It was always every week was going to be a new challenge.
And I love the freshman practice field story, but can you give us another kind of behind the scenes story of during your time at USC?
I guess for me, the thing that left the greatest impact was Tony Smith had transferred from Michigan State to SC, and so he had to sit out a year. But he practiced. And Tony came in. Tony was pretty flamboyant, and he was also 6'5" and 270. Bubba Scott, Bubba Smith, his big brother, who played for Baltimore and ended up coming to play against the Rams one year, showed up at practice, and he was the biggest human being I'd ever seen at that point. I mean, Tony was big. For us, we were thinking, Tony was a big guy. I saw Tony, his complete outline of Tony, behind or in the shadow of Bubba. So, I mean, Bubba was 6'9" and over 300 easy. And, I mean, it was the first guy I ever saw who had to bend down and turn sideways to go through a doorway. It was huge. And he had narrow hips and a fairly narrow waist for a guy that was that big. So it wasn't like he was fat, and dumpy. I mean, he just one big, huge, massive man. And I thought to myself, God, if that's pro ball, that's really going to be tough. But he was great. He came down and he was giving his brother a bad time, as any older brother would give his younger brother. And he was great with all of us. And it was a really kind of had nothing to do with SC football per se, but it was just a great opportunity and a great experience.
Sure. and some of those great experiences on the road. What would you say your favorite road venue, even kind of neutral site, anything away from home, that the game that you took part in?
The places that were probably had the most meaning and had the most for me were going to the Rose Bowl. I got to go twice. There is nothing like coming out of that tunnel on New Year's Day and seeing 100,000 plus people, and all the pageantry that goes with it. Behind that was going to Birmingham and playing Alabama, and then walking and playing in the dome in Notre Dame.
And you played with, I mean, we've gone over it a little bit, played with a ton of phenomenal players. If you could have played with one former Trojan that you didn't get a chance to play with, who would that be?
I thought about that when we were talking about this earlier, and you were asking me for some interviews, and I was thinking about that question. What came to mind for me was Marv Goo. So he was, to me, he was everything that USC was. I mean, he embodied the whole legend, the history, the attitude, what it was to be, a USC Trojan, and he lived it and breathed it, and he shared that all the time. He was most inspirational for 2 years in a row. As a smaller player who played very big, that kind of fit into my realm. The other guy was a guy named Warren Stevenson, not really well known by a lot of people, but he also was most inspirational in 1961, and later ended up being one of my assistant football coaches when I got to high school in Lakewood. So another SC influence.
Sure. Your favorite memory, and on the field, off the field, anything during your time at USC, the thing that kind of hits you first when you look back at that time.
Oh, my best memory. Let's see. I guess again, the whole idea of being a Trojan, having probably the first time I walked into the gym, the old gym, not Heritage Hall. This is the old gym that was underneath the old gymnasium, and we went down the steps down into the tunnel and down into the basement down there. And I walked in there at 18 years old, and I got my locker, I got my SC helmet. They gave me jersey, they gave me pads, they gave me pants, they gave me socks, jock. They gave me the whole 9 yards. And then you realize I'm really here. My name was on the helmet, and that was probably the most gratifying and most rewarding memory I have, because everything to get there, and then all of a sudden to realize you're now here. Of course, I had no idea what that meant, and what it was going to entail, what was going to come from that. But just the fact that I'd gotten there to that point, everything was so new, and actually achieving that time.
What was your life after football, personally or professionally? What did you do when football ended for you?
See, for me, I ended up doing a number of different things. I've told people, I said I was a jock my whole life. Went to SC, went to the School of Business. So I thought in my mind, well, I'm gonna be a suit and tie guy, because I've been in jock straps and dirty locker rooms and running around in the mud and the blood and the beer for a long, long time. So I got out. I was going to do I sold some insurance for a while. I sold some duplicating products. Ultimately, I ended up joining the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and with them, I ended up working for almost 15 years. I did 10 years in plain clothes, primarily doing international terrorists and subversives. But during that time was the original World Football League came out. And while I was a deputy of about 3 or 4 years at the time, I had an opportunity, went down for an open tryout and ended up getting picked to play. Of course, I never told the sheriff's department until they said, "Come on, we're leaving for Philadelphia on Friday." So I said, "I'm working. I got to go tell somebody." So I actually had to go talk to Peter Pitches directly, and because it had never happened before, they kind of made some concessions, and I was able to play for the second year of the World Football League while I was a deputy. Funny thing, after 15 years of doing patrol in East Los Angeles and uniforms and drunks and arrests and fights, and I ended up tearing my knee up, not from football, but from being in law enforcement. And after the third operation, they said, "You can still chase him, but you can't catch him anymore." So I basically retired from the sheriff's department. From there, I went on and I worked for the Recording Industry Association of America, which is the trade association for the music industry, primarily dealing with the unlawful duplication of sound recording, doing U.S. trademark and copyright infringement. And then I finally ended up, after that, moving out to the desert, and I got together with a something called a security company, and we specialized in events and basically did player protection, and then pretty much set up security plans and ran them and oversaw them for everything from PGA events, ATP, WTA, professional tennis tournaments, major music events like Coachella Fest and Stagecoach. So those were kind of the things that kind of followed in line.
Okay, and what piece of advice would you give to current or future USC student athletes?
I guess now being older and wiser, having been there, as they say, I would tell the player today, first be an athlete and second be a student, but take advantage of every opportunity and experience that SC has for you, not just on the athletic field, but all the other activities and things that are available to them. I've learned and didn't realize at the time, I've learned since then the relationships and the friendships you make with people while you're there, or once you're there, and once you leave there, those stay with you and you deal with those for the rest of your life. So I tell the story. I know there's a lot of players have been told that when you're getting recruited, I used to tell you, well, don't go to UCLA because you'll be a Bruin for 4 years. Don't go to Notre Dame, you'll be an Irishman for 4 years. But if you go to USC, you'll be a Trojan for life. And I've found that to be very, very true. I've had people all over the world, complete strangers, either see my name, see my ring, my Rose Bowl ring or my SC ring, and go, "I know you. I know who you are." And then they'll start naming off things that I did when I played 50 years ago. It's amazing. The Trojan fan is truly an unbelievable person who they really take hold and truly believe in the school, and that can be used for your advantage and can be a great asset for you. I mean, I've told people that, I've had people walk up to me out of the blue, and that's the kind of thing that you just can't buy that.
So I want to dive into some of these answers, and we'll get to the kick, I guess, in a little bit. But obviously known kind of as a kicker, but played safety as well. How did that go coming into USC? Did you know you were going to play a couple different spots? Or how did that play out?
I came in SC. I was going to carry the ball bag if I could, just to get on the field. Okay, again, at 5'9" and 170 pounds, and I got there and started looking around and going, I felt the old joke. I felt like a Smurf because there weren't a lot of people looking like me. I made jokes about the fact that I said I was the only Hispanic at the time that wasn't cutting the grass or serving food somewhere on campus. But it was, 50 years ago, it was somewhat of an oddity. I took advantage of every opportunity. Um, I was happy to be there. When I got recruited, I had been a sprint out type of quarterback. So when I got to SC in '67, it just so happened that the '67 team was going to be playing Michigan State with Jimmy Ray, was going to be playing UCLA with Gary Beban, was going to be playing, Notre Dame with Terry Hanratty. Sonny Sixkeller was at Washington State. So there were a lot. Super Bill Bradley was at Texas. So the scheme was a lot of sprint out running type quarterbacks. And so laughing and joking with Coach Fertig, there were a couple times we talked about, why me? And he basically says, well, Coach McKay wasn't sure you were going to be able to play for us. He said, but he couldn't take the chance of you playing against us. So I thought, well, I'll take that. I'll take that. And so that's kind of where it went. I did some kicking when I was in high school. Again, just any other excuse to get on the field and stay on the field. It just happened that when I was a freshman, the kid that was kicking got in. By the time we got to spring ball, he decided to leave school. So I went in as a freshman during spring ball. We had no permanent kicker. So I stood up and says, I can kick, I can do that. So I started becoming a kicker, full time. And then as a defensive back and a sprint out type quarterback, I ran the offense for the opposing team for our defense to do the sprint outs and do all those other things. So that's kind of how I got started, and it just kind of worked out for me. So by the time I was a sophomore, Mike Battle had been the preempted safety, and they chose to move him over to cornerback for the first part of the season, and I got a shot to play safety for a while. And then as a couple other things moved around, Sandy Durkle got real well and was a starter, and a couple of Jerry Mullins was taking our rover spot. So they moved Mike back to safety for the 2/3 of the end of my sophomore year, and so I just kind of filled in and came in and played whenever possible. My junior year, same kind of thing. I was fighting grades my junior year, so Coach Fertig says, "Don't come to spring ball, get your grades up." I got my grades up. When I came back, obviously I didn't go to spring ball, so again I was a backup for him. By the time my senior year, I was pretty much dead set that I was going to be playing full time. And in spring, Coach Fertig came to me again and handed me the offensive playbook and said, "I want you to learn all the quarterback stuff." I go, "I've been a quarterback since I was a freshman." Okay. The thing was, we had Mike Ray as a sophomore, Jimmy Jones as our starter for the second year, and Coach decided, why carry another third quarterback? He said, Ayala's a quarterback. We'll run him in the spring, and if we need to, he could be our Tom Matty. Student body right, student body left, student body right, and he's going to punt anyway. So we got it covered. So that's kind of what happened. I ended up taking the whole spring as a quarterback and playing quarterback, knowing that I wanted to be the starting safety. And then by the time I came back in the fall, Coach Freddie and Coach McKay put me back at safety and said, okay. And I kind of got it. I got some good luck and some good plays, and ended up making almost 100 tackles that year and had 6 interceptions. And so, yeah, but I'm mostly known for the kick.
I mean, what was that practice time like? How did you split that up? Were you when you were working at quarterback, was it full-time quarterback? Did you get some safety in as well and some kicking during practice?
I would just run. I just run in between drills. If the quarterbacks, because we still had 3 guys or 4 guys that were out there, so I'd run over and do skeleton pass and run some drills with them, and then run back over to the offensive side, and they let me do it. But that was one of the things my senior year. I ended up with the Elmer Gloomy Gus Award for the most minutes played. Mm-hmm. So I just, tried not to get off the field. I mean, I saw too many guys that got hurt or got replaced, and they never got back on the field. So I just, like I said, I would have carried the ball back when I showed up as a freshman, and I would have done the same thing when I was a senior. So, like I said, for me, all the moons lined up, the stars lined up, things worked out. I was able to probably do a lot of things there that I may not have been able to do at another school.
So we'll get to 1969, the Stanford game. Can you kind of set the scene for us? What was going on, kind of, I guess, quickly up until the end, and then go ahead and take your time. How did that unfold, those last kind of few minutes of that game for you?
Kind of, remember at the beginning I told you that because of SC tradition and things, I mean, we would have, Coach McKay would come in pregame, and he'd sit there, and the first time we'd have all the offense and defense together. Most of the time we were in two different separate meeting rooms. But before the game, he would bring everybody into one meeting room just before game time. And Coach McKay would sit there with a chalkboard and a piece of chalk, and he'd go through, okay, we're going to run this kind of defense, we're going to do this. And he'd start putting X's and O's. So they're going to do this. So we've already practiced, and we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. So we'll be able to stop that. Then we go to defense. He goes, okay, we know that their tendencies are to do this, this, and they have a favorite player. They like to want to do this. And our defense is going to do this, this, and this. And so we're going to take care of that. Well, you'd walk out of that meeting with no doubt in your mind. He's already got it figured out. We know how to beat him on offense. We know how to beat him on defense. So all we got to do is execute. Kind of what happened with Stanford. Went back and forth. Got down towards the last drive. We're back on the 30th, somewhere like that. Never thought about if I would get an opportunity. I was more focused on when I got the opportunity. I mean, I had all the confidence in the world. Our guys were gonna march down the field. We were gonna get close. We were either gonna score or I was gonna get a shot at it. So I really didn't have time to think about what if or, oh my gosh, this could be, last second type thing. It was just one of those, we ran it down to as much as we had. I was ready. Coach had pulled me over about 20 seconds, 30 seconds left. We had ran two more plays. Mullins with that great catch on the outside, and everybody just ran and went to the place. Sid Smith, the All-American, he was mostly a tackle, but he was also our center for us on long snaps. And he told me afterwards, he says, Ron, I got set. I looked up because we kicked into the tunnel end. And he says, I looked up, I saw 1 on the clock. He says, and I just snapped the ball. I don't know if you were ready or not. I just snapped the ball. And so that was kind of the way it just happened. It wasn't a lot of forethought. It wasn't a lot of planning. It was just one of those, I'm looking for the opportunities. Get me close, give me a chance. And when it came, he just ran on. We did it. Again, we practiced these things so many times that it would just go out and execute. And then afterwards, it was pretty much of a pandemonium. Never got, it was the first and only time I got carried off the floor of the Coliseum on my teammates. So that was pretty special.
Was anybody saying anything leading up to it, or was it kind of like a pitcher with a no-hitter where everyone?
Kind of a pitcher with a no-hitter. I'd run up and down. I mean, I was running up and down the sidelines as much as anybody else was, watching the offense and cheering. And then, like I said, with about 20 to 25 seconds left, Coach McKay called me over and he says, okay, Ron, you're gonna do this. He says, we're gonna get you close. So, all right, yeah, I'll just get me in there, just get me close. And that was the last thing, and they just got pushed, and off we went.
Anything kind of after that? I know you talked about the conversation with Sid Smith, but anything from Coach McKay or any other coaches or players?
I think the things that have lasted the time is I've talked to a number of people who have talked to Stanford people. They're still very bitter about that 50 years later. They're not happy. I had a friend of mine who knew who knew a couple of the players. There was also, I come to find out and saw it ultimately, there was a marquee in United Airlines in San Francisco Airport when you're deplaning and you're heading back to the terminal. There was a thing in there about Stanford and all that, and about a third of the way down it said, "Oh yes," and Ron Ayala kicked a 34-yard field goal, beating Stanford next year, which kept Jim Plunkett from ever playing in the Rose Bowl. So I thought, well, I'm still remembered, even in places that I wasn't their best friend. So those are the kinds of things. I mean, I meet people now, and like I said, the kick. Well, I'm mostly known for that one play, but I was just thankful for having the opportunity to be at the right place at the right time.
That 1969 team, that whole season, what stands out to you about that? What was that? I guess what was being on that team like?
Never die, never give up, never accept defeat. It was, the Cardiac Kids were truly that. I mean, they just every single player had that mentality that we're going to win. I don't know how. I don't know how we're going to get there at the end, but I know we're going to win some way, somehow. And I think that was a great part of the coaching that we had, right from the top, from Coach McKay all the way down to managers and ball boys. I mean, everybody had that attitude that we're going to win somehow, some way. We're going to win, and that was a big part of that 6-9 team, and just great characters. We had, like I said, you had Sam Dickerson, who's long and lean and could fly into that corner. You had, still had some of the Wild Bunch guys, Cowlings and Charlie Weaver and those guys. So Greg Slough. I mean, it was just an unbelievable team. Clarence Davis, Jimmy Jones. I mean, we had just a lot of really, really good players.
And I know, like you mentioned at practice, you're running around all over the place. So I don't know if you had time to see anything else, but you as a quarterback running there, as a safety, you would have had kind of an interesting view of that Wild Bunch line. What was your playing sort of around those guys, around that group? What do you remember about that?
The ferocity. These guys played with great emotion, great energy, and they never stopped coming after you, as evidenced by what happened to Dennis Dummett UCLA game. He got hit and knocked back, 6 feet in the air, and that's the way these guys played. I mean, they weren't the greatest individual players that we played against, or sometimes even on our team, but as a unit, as a team, unbelievable, unbeatable. They were just really, really, they worked off of each other, and they gave each other energy, and therefore gave everybody else energy too.
And then you played for John McKay. You talked about Craig Fertig, two of the more kind of beloved coaches in USC history. Can you give us a McKay story? I know so many of them have been sort of talked about and published and that, but what do you, I guess, remember maybe most from playing for John McKay?
Two things. One is that I used to tell people that Coach McKay had a very prolific vocabulary. I also told people that if Coach McKay never talked to you at practice, you had a great day. So Coach McKay coached coaches. He would coach coaches. The coaches would coach us. He was not the kind of guy that used to sit up in a tower like Bear Bryant or some of the other coaches. We would be on the field. He'd go to a drill. If we were doing skeleton drill with offensive backs and wide receivers and linebackers and defensive backs, he'd be leaning against the fence and watching. Probably the thing that impressed me the most, I think I was a junior. We were still practicing on old Boulevard field, the baseball field, and we were all the way against the left field foul line out in the outfield, doing skeleton off passing drills. Okay, so we had, like I said, quarterbacks, backs, wide receivers, and then we had linebackers and defensive backs. And we're running plays and running defenses. And the offensive line and defensive line were on the right field foul line. Coach McKay all of a sudden came off the wall. No, 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 no. And he starts walking across at a very fast pace from where we were on the left field foul line to the right field foul line. And he walked up to one of the guards and he told him, yelling all the way, he says, absolutely not. That's not the way we taught you. All right. When you pull to the right, you pivot with that right foot out first, then you go. You do not cross over with your feet. If you can't do better now, I'll find somebody else. And I'm going, how the hell did he see that? I was clear across the field. But again, that was just Coach McKay. He had that kind of visual acuity to the game where he could see things that most of us never saw. I mean, he'd do something and we'd go, how did he see that? Is he like, he's got cameras, is he watching us, you know? But like I said, the other thing was Coach McKay could walk into the locker room, walk right through all of us, never say a word, just go right on back and go into the room. And then he told us one time at a meeting, he says, I know you guys are saying, I walked through, I don't even say hi to anybody. He says, there's 55 of you guys. What am I do? You go, hi, 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 hi. You know I know who you are. You know who I am. I don't need to say hi to you every day for you to know that I know you. So that was the end of it. Nobody worried about Coach McKay saying hi to you when he walked by. So those are kind of the biggest things. Coach Fertig was, he was a player's coach. He was your best friend, but he also took care of you and gave you great training. Whitmar Levy was another guy that was my defensive back coach when I was there, and gave me a lot of personal instruction and help with bettering my game. Again, Coach Marv Gu was just, if he was inspirational in 53 or 54 for the SC teams, he was inspirational for SC players and FD teams from the time he became a coach until he left. And he was all about SC and pride and doing your best and giving your most and making the best you were.
So now you, again, we've talked about playing multiple positions, and it seems like you're kind of comfortable for being known for the Stanford kick and USC kicker, but you're sitting here, tied for 13th all time at USC in interceptions. In 1970 had the 2 interception game against 76 Killer and Washington, kind of iced that game. When people talk to you, do you kind of push your defensive stats a little bit? And
only if it comes up, or somebody makes a comment, well, the only thing you did was kick. As well, there were I did a few other things while I was there. But again, you know as well as I do, you know what college sports are. Everything is about getting prepared and people going the year before and getting you lined up so people start looking for you or for different things. I mean, enough people saw what I did and who played. I got to go to the Hula Bowl. I was in the All Pac-10, and I don't regret having the one thing to be remembered by. Better to have that than have nothing. I'm happy for the opportunity and for the chance I had.
And then last thing for you here, how connected, I guess, did you stay to the USC program and Trojan football and even kind of extending to today?
When I first left, I didn't at all. I mean, I got involved in a whole bunch of things with work and getting married and have a kid, and then just trying to figure out where I was going to be in life. And the hard part was going back and sitting in stands. I had a real hard time. It was tough enough watching TV with people. Being a defensive safety, being a quarterback. When I was a safety, one of the advantages I had, even though I was short, slow, and not very big, but I was a quarterback. So knowing keys that quarterbacks are going to look for. They're going to, you know, if the linebacker goes out, or the linebacker comes in, if the cornerback comes up, or the safety comes over, well, I kind of know what their next, you know, what their rotation is. And that's one of the things that helped me as a defensive back. I could get a jump on things that kind of helped me overcompensate my lack of real all-out speed. I'd get a jump and be 2 steps in a direction already before maybe the next guy did. And so those kind of things kind of really help. So being kind of a multi-position player at that time for me gave me an advantage, and I took advantage. And I used that as an advantage. I learned the other team's plays, you know, by watching films, just like, you know, we do for today. But I would watch films both offense and defense, because I may have to do some more, you know, watch to see how they would come after kickers, and how they would come after punter, how they would come after place kicker, what they would do to kick off guys. And then the same thing on offense, watching what the rotation was for a quarterback. Not so much just watching individual players, but more kind of watching the reads. And gave me a step up once or twice that kind of helped me.
All right, that's USC quarterback, safety, and also occasional kicker. Ron Ayala. Ron, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it today.
I got to thank you very much for being honored enough to be thought enough to be called and asked to get together with you. Again, anytime, any place.
Absolutely. USC hero, Ron Ayala. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.